Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone. This is Zoom meeting number 50 with Deborah Willett from Family Connections. And we have a lot to talk about. We have actually to continue our series on the winter holidays and how we work through that with our kids. And so before we do that, as always, we're going to tap into one of our attention practices. So this is a very simple one that you can do with your eyes open or closed. You can do it wherever you are. And so personally, I'm going to close my eyes because I'm in an office and I'm driving along. And just feeling yourself where you are in your seat, where you're standing, where you're walking, getting in touch with your body right now. And bringing your attention to sound, to what arrives at your ears. So, we don't have earlids, so our hearing is always on. Things are always arriving. So in this practice, maybe you can just notice what's arriving at your ears. Maybe you notice that there are sounds that are quick, that come and go very swiftly. Maybe notice that there are other sounds that go on for a longer time. Sort of, we think of them as background sounds just going on, and layers of other sounds. So we're just letting the sounds happen. We're just letting them appear for us, letting them show up. We don't need to lean into it and search for sounds. Just maybe being satisfied with what showed up. Be noticing that there are sounds that are inside. They're part of you. There are sounds that are very near to where you are. And there are sounds that are further away. Sounds that are distant. Letting all of that be here. Letting all of it arrive at your ears. Make itself known. And move on. So that coming and going of sound. Very much like the coming and going of thoughts. You might notice thoughts show up. They do the same thing. They arrive. They reveal themselves and they're gone. emotions also show up, register themselves with us, let us know that they're there. And if we just allow them to have their little time, they move on. And there's actually some things that we learn just from how sound and hearing work for us. And so, if you're ready, you might take a deeper breath in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And you might try another one. And good things come in threes, so maybe just one more. Breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. So you may have some idea of how you are right now. We've spent a little time settling ourselves with the sounds around us and maybe with our breath. So since we're recorded and I can't ask the audience, I'm going to ask my guest, Deborah, how it is for her right now after having.
Very relaxing.
Okay.
I'm in a small office, and the only noise I heard was the water going through the baseboard heat and hearing the water and nothing else, which in my house is very unusual not to hear anything. So it was very relaxing.
Okay. Yeah. A brief pause, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, in the busyness. Yeah. All right. So Deborah is with Grand Family Connections, a really interesting organization that I'm hoping that Deborah will tell us about and just sort of introduce the whole idea to us.
Sure. Our Grand Family Connections is under the Coatesville Center for Community Health, and we support grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, coaches, older siblings who are raising the child of a loved one who, for at the time, are unable to. Most of the time, these families are formed due to mental health, substance use, and incarceration. And some of the times it includes the death of a parent, either
Mm,
to substance use. Um, we have some children who have lost both parents. We have some children who have one or both of their parents that are incarcerated. We have an older sibling raising a younger sibling because of their parent being incarcerated. Um, the ages of our caregivers range from 24 to 85. So it's a
mm,
wide variety. People,
yeah.
because of the name of grand families, they always think we're older, but we write it out with the grand being in all capitals so that, because every family that does this is grand, we feel.
Yeah.
That's how we've done that. And it started about 15 years ago. I am a grand family. So I have the lived experience. I got the call. My daughter was in Texas with my granddaughter, and I got a call from my daughter and said that Child Protective Services had come out, and my daughter is adopted and suffers from fetal alcohol. So she doesn't always make the most informed decisions. And someone had found my granddaughter at 16 months old walking in the parking lot unattended of an apartment complex. So I asked my daughter, I said, can I talk to the caseworker? And she said yes. So I shared with the caseworker, I said, if she needs to, if you're going to planning on putting her in foster care, you tell me and I'll be on the first plane down to get her. And so that was 15 years ago. And during that time, I was working as a family peer support, helping families in Chester County navigate the child serving systems, mental health, children and youth, drug and alcohol, juvenile probation. And I mentioned in a system of care meeting one time that the number of families that I saw that the children were being raised by someone other than the parent was very large. And the director of human services at the time said, we need to do something to help support these families.
Mm,
So between the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the Department of Aging, Department of Mental Health, and Child and Family Focus, we created the first Grand Family support group in Chester County. And that was started about 15 years ago, and it continued up until COVID. And then they have kind of closed that one down. But in the meantime, there was a need in Coatesville, and Catherine Spurlock with the Coatesville Center for Community Health had asked if I would think about considering starting a support group in Coatesville. And that's all that we thought it was going to be, was just a support
mm,
group. We started our first meeting. We had one grandmother with her granddaughter there. And at our biggest event was the end of October. We had a hayride and bonfire. We had 82 people register, and we had
wow.
65 attend. So it's really growing. The need
Yeah.
just it's unbelievable, the needs. And this is at the time, it didn't, pre-COVID, it just seemed like they just needed the support. They needed to know they weren't the only ones going through this. They wanted the emotional connection because your life changes totally when you get a child. Some of our grandparents are retired, some are both working, didn't think they would need childcare again. And then how do you
Yeah.
childcare at the cost of childcare? And it changed everything. So but then now the finances are getting really bad. We had three families on the verge of eviction. The best story ever, I think, was there was several agencies in the area that all pulled together and were able to get this family into new housing. They were caring for four grandchildren and a great grandchild. I just had a call 2 days ago, one of our grandfamilies who is raising eight grandchildren. The grandmother had a stroke and she's in the hospital, she's in ICU, and the grandfather's overwhelmed. He's trying to do this all on his own. So again, we need to connect the dots with these services that can step in and help these. We can't, I'm the only staff for Grand Family Connections. So it's a lot for one person to be able to do.
Yeah.
Um, just from a personal background, I said I have the lived experience. I have my granddaughter, but then I also have a 6-year-old who I've had since he was 14 months old. His paternal grandmother had seen the flyer at a senior center about our support group and reached out and needed help. And about 10 to 15 minutes into the conversation, she was saying she needed someone to raise her 14-month-old grandson.
Mm,
Mom was on the streets in Kensington. Dad was in, I forget, it was mental health or drug and alcohol rehab. And the grandmother had her own limitations and couldn't raise him. So I said yes. And so
mm,
I now have a 6-year-old. So I have 13 kids, 12 of mine are adopted, and they range in age from 6 to 46. So I have a lot of lived experience because most of my kids with being adopted, there's trauma. And I was just talking to someone this morning that when I first started adopting, that was never brought up about a trauma. My oldest adopted
mm,
child's 44. You didn't hear about it then. And even back then when she was diagnosed, she wasn't diagnosed with fetal alcohol. This pediatrician just said, well, if the birth mom drank alcohol and she's showing this and this, yeah, then that's what she's got. So now there's so much more knowledge on the trauma, and it's overwhelming how these children carry it into the school setting. Um, Abandonment issues, attachment issues. It can be my 6-year-old, God bless his teachers and his one-on-ones in school because he's constantly in this fight or flight mode and
yeah.
just not feeling safe and secure. And he was so young when he came to me. Um, he still will say, "Are you picking me up?" And I said, "I've never left you anywhere." So it is tough. So, but we are hoping to, make a difference in the lives of these children. We do reach out to the community for support because I just had someone today volunteer if we need to pick up supplies to take to families. I have a small car and can't fit too much in, and since I'm the only staff, it makes it difficult. Um,
Mm.
but they face challenges navigating the systems. Um, Sometimes when the children gradually come to the families, like the parents will say, "Can you watch them this weekend?" And then the weekend turns into a week, into 2 weeks, and everything. And also, in those situations, there's no legal documentation on these kids, and they cannot enroll them in school. They can't seek medical attention for them. Some mental health providers require custody and not guardianship. So trying to figure all that out is tough. Um, getting them health insurance, getting them to cover the dental. That was something we found
Mm.
out last spring. We had a run on children with infected teeth, and the parents had guardianship, or the grandparents had guardianship, but no dentist would pull the teeth without either custody or parent signature. And a lot of times they don't know where the parents are. So
I,
there's a lot of challenges trying to.
mm.
I was in an IEP meeting once at a school, and I said to the staff that was there, I said, every time you see a child that's being raised by someone other than the parent, the first thing you should think of is trauma. And I kind of got this look like, yeah, what are you talking about, you know? And then I said, if it wasn't because of either the trauma they experienced in their home of origin, um, the trauma of removing them from them and placing them in a new environment. They may have left their school, their friends, everything they were familiar with. That's a trauma right there.
Ah,
So it's hard. It really, but then there's also a light at the end of the tunnel. My granddaughter, I ended up adopting. She now just turned 17. She was 22 months when I got her. And about a year and a half ago, she said, she said, you stepped in and did everything my mom was supposed to do. So I'm like, oh, you saw, sometimes you think, oh, they hate me, especially when they're teenagers, you can't do anything,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I really, appreciated having her say that. And sometimes they grow up a lot quicker because of some of the things they have experienced, and
Yeah.
not always a good thing, but she's a straight A student, working her way to college, hopefully in about 2 years. And but then there's the others though that do st keep struggling. And so one thing we really emphasize is getting them into mental health,
Yeah.
getting some kind of treatment, and that's the one thing with our support group that we have. Um, it was a byproduct that we hadn't expected was we thought the support group would be for the caregivers. And we knew in order to get them out, we'd provide a dinner and we would have childcare so that would erase the excuse of they just got home, we've got to cook dinner, they've got to do homework and everything else. So they come out,
Hmm.
and for the last, I think, 2 years, we've been fortunate that our youth worker has lived experience of being raised for many years by her grandmother also. And she's trauma trained and she understands the needs of and what the kids are going through. And the kids form a bond with each other. Then they realize they're not the only one in school with gray hair people coming in and picking them up and we had one point, I think it was 4 6th graders that all attended the same school. And the bond that they formed it was amazing how they just felt there was someone else like them. And that really helped them. So, yeah, is there anything else you would
So
like?
you're helping the whole family, and one of the things that struck me as a big thread going through this is the kids feeling like they are safe, like they belong, and that tension around that because of sort of the whole beginning of the situation is that it's not, and they don't belong, and my
Mhm.
goodness. um you know when I think about that, I think about our program of learning life skills together, and how one of the great values that we have, and one of the things that we really emphasize is a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And really the life skills that we teach are all kind of what makes belonging possible, what makes it happen, what makes it deepen. This is a whole way of thinking about these basic skills of paying attention to what's happening around you and how you feel about it is one of the things that happens with as kids are growing up is they either start to tune into that or it's scary and they don't tune into it, so they don't know how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I'd rather not know, in some sense. And so to be able to gently show how that is really helpful to you is kind of what we're getting at. And that's really, the sort of the responsibility of, we talk about parents and carers. And so, that the long list of people who are
Mm-hmm.
taking care of the children that you're talking about, those are all, in our definition of carers. And
Mm-hmm.
so if they're sort of tuned into this and doing these things, paying attention to what's happening in the situation and how it makes them feel, and how they then work with that, they're modeling this for the kids all the time, right? And so it really seems to me that there's
And
some,
that
some
belonging, I think, brings the security that they so
yeah,
much
yeah,
need and
yeah.
want.
If
Yes.
if I'm with you and I'm paying really deep attention to you and to myself, that's where that belonging feeling starts to build,
Mm-hmm.
right?
One illustration with my little guy, it was probably maybe 6 months ago. Well, I guess I started when he went to kindergarten. Um, he realized he doesn't have a dad. When I ended up adopting him,
Mm.
single parent adoption, and he keeps saying, "When am I getting a dad? When am I getting a dad?" I'm like, "Well, we can't just go shopping for dads. They just don't." So, um, but one of my older sons was living with us at the time, and he was in his late 20s. And I reached out to, he said to me, "Can I call Lucas, dad?" And I said, "Well, honey," I said, "because of the adoption, he's your brother." He says, "But he's a dad. He has two kids of his own." And I said, "Yes, he's their dad." And so I talked to a therapist about it, and she came up with what I thought was such a perfect answer. I said, "Would it be wrong to let him call him dad?" I said, "If it just satisfies a need or whatever." And she said, "Check with your son and see if he would be okay if the littler one would call him his bro dad." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds so perfect." So I asked my son, I said,
Mm.
"What do you think?" And he says, "I don't care. That's fine with me." So I told my little one, and he says, "Oh, okay." He's never referred to him as that, but he's never asked again about a dad. I
Mm.
think it just filled that little void, that little
Yeah.
need that, okay, if somebody says they've got a dad, I can say I've got my bro dad at home.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
just thought, I thought she was a genius to come up with that idea. I have never heard of
Yeah.
anything like that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that kind of connection, that kind of belonging, yeah, having it defined for you. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a sweet story. Yeah. So, we have this idea of paying attention, of really being with the child, I guess is what it comes down to, and with yourself at the same,
Hmm.
so that you're tuned in. And then the next of the skills is the skill of working with your own emotions, so often, I mean, and in the folks that you're talking about, the children and possibly the adults as well, the element of trauma in there is really, is something that I think the way we think about emotion regulation is really helpful, because it's noticing how you're feeling and then taking the time, taking a pause to really acknowledge what's there and understand it a little bit before you go on and do something so that it's not, we just work from that immediate feeling that we give a beat. And again, it's the parents demonstrating how we can do that, how
I
we
love that idea because with a lot of our caregivers, myself included, we grew up in a generation we didn't hear about emotions. Yeah, you were happy or sad, but there was nothing in between. And so we don't have the skills sometimes to pass it on to them. Since my son's been in therapy, I've learned more about me,
Mhm.
because of him
Yeah.
being in therapy and the therapist saying, now try this with him and try this. I'm like, okay, okay, so I think doing this together is what I liked so much about the program.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, so this is it. So, I'm feeling really sad right now. Yeah,
Mhm.
so what can I do? Would you give me a hug? I mean, anything like that is going to, demonstrate that this is a real thing that grown-ups do, you know,
Mhm.
that therefore, you can do it too, and you
Mhm.
can learn how to do it. So all of these skills and the way they're sort of set up for the parents and carers to brush up on them, as we say, because as we do recognize our emotions, but maybe not, quite as formally as I'm talking about it, maybe not, naming them. Although, one of my favorite strategies for working with emotions is to name them because the minute we do that, we have more control over.
Mhm.
It's actually the way our brain works
Mhm.
that, when we stop, notice how we're feeling and say, oh, I'm feeling angry right now, or I'm feeling irked right now, so we don't have to go all the way to, because the more words we have, the more we turn on that part of our brain, which is the thinking part, and gives us more control of what's happening with the emotions, right? That's
Mhm.
the very basic thing that's going on there. So just saying, you know, I think maybe you're feeling a little irked with your sister right now. Do you know what I mean? And so now we're building up some vocabulary. We're using the parts of the brain that can help us control things rather than just diving right into to
Because they're little
the
sponges. They learn,
yeah.
they repeat. And my little guy walked in the other day and he says, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, you're 6 years old. But I
Wow.
wouldn't think a 6-year-old would say, I'm exhausted, but I think he hears it from me.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, yeah. So, again, this is about attention and then this capacity to work with our emotions. And of course, the big one for everybody in this situation is the next skill, which is tolerating our distress. When things are, a little upset, and we work with it and we name it and we tame it, that's great. But when it's going on and on, it gets much harder. And so the strategies that we use there are different. We do need to distract ourselves. Sometimes we need to take a break from
Mhm.
trying to figure it out, from trying to do something. Sometimes we just need to take care of ourselves and to give ourselves some relief, whether it's sitting down and reading a story or, those kinds of things. That's not a wrong thing at all. It's a strategy that has, a lot of value and brings again that value of belonging, right? If we say, okay, well, I think we've talked about this enough. Let's go make pancakes,
I think
whatever it is. Yeah.
tolerance is so needed in our situations because a lot of our children, some of them have been prenatally drug exposed. or to alcohol, fetal
Mm,
alcohol, and trying, their attention span and their reactions are
yeah,
much quicker sometimes, and
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
can keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
And I can feel sometimes myself, like, okay, I'm gonna need to take a break because he's in that
Yes.
nonstop mode right now.
Yes, and again, this is both of you, it's you're modeling for the child, and the child is letting you know because you're watching what they need. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so the final thing, of the final of the four skills, and you can sort of see that they build on each other, is to communicate effectively about these things. And so, kind of the more we know, the more we practice, the easier it gets to communicate. And the more likely the child is to say, "Hey, I'm feeling scared right now. Can I have a hug? Can we go somewhere where it's more quiet?" Whatever that is, to avoid the meltdown, to do what needs to be done for ourselves, and to be able to say, right now, I need this. I mean, that's really much easier than trying to figure out what that meltdown is all about.
We can always go back to it later.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
So those are our four skills. And then we have things that we like people to do together that are very sort of basic and simple things, but we know from scientifically, we know from the evidence that they all help support our mental health. The very first one that we came up with when we were designing the program is going for a walk.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just need to go for a walk. But if we make it a practice, if we make it a habit, so, when everybody's back from school, work, whatever, we go for a walk for 10 minutes to get up an appetite or whatever it is. We just go right in the neighborhood, just take a walk, whatever it is. And then maybe, walks can be a cool thing. And it can be something you do on a Saturday where you go to a park or something, and it's a little bit more of a thing. But the idea is that this is a thing that we do together on a regular basis, just 3 times a week or something. The nurse practitioner that worked with me, one of them, we had two working with us on developing this, said, "You know what? That walking thing is genius. If you could get parents and kids to go for a walk 3 times a week together for 10 minutes, you would change the world."
Hmm.
And he said, and I'm not kidding you. I said, I believe that.
Hmm.
Because think of the things that happen when we're walking side by side. It's not this, it's not I'm here looking at you, kid. It's we're together. We're having, we're just two people walking. What can we talk about? And so we have a little more open communications, a little less of that I'm the big one, you're the little one kind of thing going on. And plus, just moving ourselves like that, good for our health. You know,
Mhm.
you hear a lot about the 10,000 steps and that kind of stuff. That's all kind of nonsense when you look at the actual effects. 10-minute walk every day is very, very helpful for people
Mhm.
physiologically, just, medically, much less the mental health side of it. We know
Mhm.
that that's a mental health side effect too. So, just really simple things.
I
Um,
think that would be neat because you also would get to experience what they're seeing on a lower level.
yeah,
The caterpillars, the
yeah,
different
yeah,
things that
yeah.
they notice and everything, and it brings up more conversations too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so you're sort of moving me along here to say that then there are things that we do when we walk. like you can look at the birds, you can look at the, as you say, the insect life in the deep summer when there's all kinds of stuff crawling around. It's flying overhead, it's crawling, and it doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to be in the deep forest to have that. There's birds everywhere. You can walk through Lowe's or Home Depot and have birds flying at you. I saw a group of sparrows in the Acme the other day. I mean,
Hmm.
anywhere you can go birding, and other things that people really like to do are just so accessible. Fishing is another one that sort of push along because it's sort of you sit there, I'll sit here, we're gonna fish, we're gonna be quiet, we're gonna chat, and it's an excuse. It's a way of being out of doors, which we know has effects on us and makes us feel better. So there's that. Then there's experiencing awe and beauty. And so if we don't go highfalutin on that, if we don't think that, we have to go see the Mona Lisa or something, it's like pick up some kids' books, illustrated books at the library, sit down and look at the pictures. You don't even have to read them. We've learned that from some of the experts. It's like you can look at two of the pictures in a book for 5 minutes and talk about them. Talk about what you see, what's happening there. And it's a break. It's a moment of communication, and it does you some good because there's that beauty moment in there. Or I play you a song that I like, and then you play me a song they can like. Just stream it from the phone here. Let's do it. Um, what's that? 7 minutes? If we have that exchange. And what's changed? We're both sort of bobbing around, feeling the music, and it's that kind of shift. Um, so awe and beauty, and then making things, which is again really simple. Like I said, let's make pancakes. You know, how easy is that to do? You have to have something to eat anyway, right? So you make breakfast, you do those kinds of things. You sit down and you crayon together, you know, all of those kinds of things. Or, if the kids are older, you build a boat in the basement. I don't know. You make a bigger project, but that everybody can think about during the day. You know. So, and then the final one is belonging, you know, literally to have a place where you, parent and child, go and people count on you to be there. We know how good this is for humans. It's kind of, we really need to have connections, and we need to have those close connections that grand families are building, right? And then we need that other space, that other group that we're connected to. You I I always say that sort of the main piece of evidence we have about this is how much better people's mental health and physical health is who are members of a religious congregation of whatever kind,
Mhm.
right? Because they need you to be there and you are part of it, and if you're not there, you're missing.
Mhm.
There's something not right. So it's sort of like, yeah, we really do belong here, and we
Mhm.
matter. And to feel that way, and that just does so much for us. you know so
Mhm.
those are the things that we're after, and that we're constantly talking about in our program. And right now, this time, this date, I mean, next week is Thanksgiving, and from when we're recording this, so I'm not sure when we're going to play this, but it's going to be within the winter holidays, right? And so there's special challenges that people face, with their kids in the holidays. And I'm thinking really that like grand families, that's that there's a lot that might be going on there and kind of a lot of things to think about that maybe, our poor life skills could be helpful in at any rate. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you even think about the holidays.
There are a lot of challenges because the kids that are older, when they come in to live with a caregiver, is they have traditions that they remember from home
Mm,
that may
yeah,
not be the same when they're living with someone else. Um, if the parent is incarcerated, that can be a really tough time for them also. They may not be able to see them on that hot day of the holiday.
yeah,
Um, and it also affects other dynamics in the family. As far as I remember, the one year I have a granddaughter who's only 3 months younger than my granddaughter that I adopted. And they got to be about 6 or 7 years old. And she said to her mom, she says, "How come she gets so much more presents from Mimi than I do?" And my daughter said to her, "Well, hon, that's because Mimi is her mom, and that's all who she gets from." She said, "You get from Dad and I and Mimi." She said, "So we give you more than we would give to your cousin." We refer to them as cousins. They because they're the same age, but technically they would
mm,
be aunt and niece, I think, but we refer to
wow,
them as cousins.
yeah,
So it affects that whole family dynamic there also, as far as who's getting more and why are they getting that. Like
mm,
I said, into the name changes, even with the adoption, because my daughter that I adopted, who was my granddaughter, she realized, she says, "So wait a minute." She said, "My biological mom is now my sister." I said, "Yeah." And so my uncles are my brothers. And she says, and then my cousin is my niece. And because I'm older, I'm the boss. And I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no." It doesn't work that way, So their minds go
she's
in
gonna
different
make it work
directions.
out for
Yeah.
herself.
I said, "So
Yeah,
no, you two are staying cousins." I said that. So
yeah,
the name titles that we have in our family are probably not typical families, but that's what we've chose. But it does. The holidays do bring up, past memories, and especially if it's the first holiday season. We've had
mm,
some families where the
yeah,
parents have just recently been arrested, and the kids witness it. The police try to do the best they can to keep them from it.
right,
But yeah, so it does, it brings, and then the grandparents then feel bad also because they may not have the funds to be able to provide for the grandkids like they did their own children when they were little.
yeah,
We've partnered with some organizations in the past, and I mean, they've been wonderful, but the grandparents still feel, "I wish I could have done something." So last year we got a grant and we were able to provide the grandfamilies with gift cards. And they loved that. They could go to the store, they could pick out the gifts, they could wrap the gifts. They felt like they were actually giving to the grandchildren. So that helped the grandparents a lot that way, doing the gift cards.
mm, yeah,
So yeah, it brings up the good memories and bad memories, but they're also making new memories, new
hmm,
traditions.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, you can sort of see how the attention to how you're feeling and the being able to express that comes out of the learning life skills together thing
Yeah.
is really kind of key to this, to working through the holiday. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it
Hmm.
can be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a difficult moment for us, I'm noticing. Thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. To move on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It is tough. So, yeah. So, anything else that you can think of, in terms of, you know, how the holidays affect this. Is there anything further, anything?
I can't think of anything else. It's mostly, I think they do go back to their family of origin in their thoughts at this time,
Yeah.
and depending on the age, because sometimes some of our grandparents have had the children since they've been born. They brought them home from the hospital, so they don't know any different because they don't have memories to miss. But the older
Mm,
they are, they have
yeah.
the memories and then they miss. Hmm.
Yeah, that brings us back to that belonging piece that we started with. Yeah, it's really um, feeling like one has a place. Yeah, and
Hmm. Because even
caught between two is not. Yeah, yeah.
right, and it's very similar. Our children are very similar to um, adopted children because they have that um, dual loyalty.
Yeah.
Especially if the parents are still around and they grieve. Um, I've heard it's called an ambiguous loss when they know the parents are out there, but they're not in
Yeah.
their life. So they're grieving, and the grandparents are the same way. They grieve for what they thought their life would be like at this age. They grieve for what they think their adult children's lives would be like. They grieve for
Yeah.
their children, the grandchildren are missing out on. So there's a lot of grief, and I think the holidays always bring back memories and
They do. Yeah.
so I think it can be a really tough time.
Yeah. And so it sounds like, I mean, what you just described there is the fact that the grand family may be made up of sort of the older people, the carers, who are in their grief, and the children who are in their grief, and they share that.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is that idea of, okay, well, I'm noticing how I'm feeling, to name it, to talk about it, to sort of bring it out as something that's possible to talk about, you
Hmm.
know, as the parent, and just see what happens with the modeling there, you know.
And often if the child has lost a parent through death, and if it's at that time where the grandparents step in, or even if they've had the child for a while, the grandparents' focus is on the child. How is the child grieving, helping them get help,
Yeah,
and their own grief isn't addressed because they're
yeah,
too busy helping the child.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm. Well, this has been really sobering talk in a way, and it shows the the possibilities of people, to build those senses of belonging, and to build resilience and strength and all that kind of stuff that comes out of, the situation itself. It's, you know, that's
Mhm.
that's kind of
That's one of our sayings is that we say, you're not on this journey alone.
yeah,
Caregivers often they feel they are alone. And if they only knew, I mean, I would love to find data on how many of us are out there. The only data that I've seen is like they'll say for the number of children that are in what they call kinship care through children and youth, where um, they are basically the grandparents are licensed foster parents for the grandchildren. For every one of those, there are estimates of between 10 and 20 who are outside of that system, who do not have, they don't get the financial support, but they
right.
don't have they don't have the caseworker helping them navigate all the different systems
Mm,
to be in. And I
yeah.
would just love to find data on how many there are. I mean, I'd love it for Chester County, but I just even for Pennsylvania would be nice. But nobody counts us really. I mean, where do you go? Because basically we're everywhere. I thought maybe through the county assistance offices because these children all qualify for medical assistance because they're not living with their family. But I don't know if they track it or not, but that would be something that I would like to see.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So, well, we would love to put your contact information up on our
Sure.
website with this Zoom meeting recording, and we'll put it on Spotify as well. And
That
so
would be great.
anything you want to supply us with to get out to people, we would love to do that.
Mhm.
And I like to sort of finish off our Zoom meetings by asking our guests for a word of wisdom
Word
or a
of
watchword. So maybe a
hmm.
watchword sounds a little easier to come up with than wisdom, but I think you have an awful lot of experience, and with that comes wisdom.
I think my word of wisdom would be, I already said it, is you're not alone.
Mm,
I think that's, because that's what's so often like when the families either first reach out to me or they first come to our support group that we have, they felt like they were the only ones because they didn't know anybody else that was raising children for a second time around. So I think that's my word of wisdom is you're not alone. Just please feel free to reach out to me.
hey. Well, thank you so much for that. Thanks for
Thank you.
talking with us.
I appreciate being the opportunity to share.